All right, well, thank you everybody for venturing out tonight. I know the weather wasn't the greatest, but thanks for coming out. And welcome to our panel conversation on data versus context versus creative and sort of the changing roles of those things in a digital television world. So I'm David Wiesenfeld. I'm the Chief Strategist at TRUOPTIK, and I'm honored to be joined by four very prominent executives from the front lines of the OTT television revolution. And I thought we could just start by having them introduce themselves briefly, maybe just tell the folks your name, the company you're with, and maybe the one or two areas that you're most focused on as it relates to OTT television. Want to go first? Melissa?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Kihara, and I've been studying and analyzing and operating in the advanced TV space for a little over 12 years now, and I'm excited to be back again for this year's discussion. It's nice to see a full house.
I'm Rob Aksman. I'm co-founder and Chief Strategy Officer for BrightLine. We are enhancing ads with personalization and interactivity across the connected TV landscape. I've been bouncing around the ITV industry for almost 14 years now, and excited that I think we're finally at a place where we can call it TVtopia, given the new ecosystem that we exist in and how great it is for consumers and marketers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Hindlian. I work at LiveRamp. I am primarily focused on driving the adoption of data throughout the television ecosystem, and I'm very excited to be here.
I'm Ken. I'm with the V12 Group. I run our digital division, and we focus heavily on leveraging a bunch of offline data into the OTT space, both from a content perspective and from an advertiser perspective. And so we're looking at ways to just optimize that on both ends and helping all sorts of advertisers and streaming video providers make the most of their content.
Great. Thanks, guys, for being here. I think we have until about 8:30 or so, but the plan was to say 5 minutes at the end for audience questions. If we don't get to do that, which we didn't get to do last year, I think all four of these folks will be here afterward, and you can interrogate them further after they've had a few more drinks and might be even more forthcoming than they're going to be up here on stage. We'll see. Maybe. So I'm kind of been around. I'm probably the oldest person sitting up here. I've been around for a while, and I know that classically advertising was always broken into two groups. There was sort of the media component and the creative component, and the creative component carried the message, and the media component delivered the message to the right person, hopefully at the right time, the right people. This whole big data revolution has really, I think, changed things a lot in advertising, and it seems to have disproportionately, in terms of the benefits, accrued more to the media side, especially in terms of targeting, than to creative, almost to the point that, in certain sorts of campaigns, it's almost about the targeting, and the creative maybe becomes secondary. But my question to you guys, and we can start maybe with Jessica, is which is more important today? Is it still creative, or is it the media?
So I actually, coming from my background with many, many years in the agency business, I see both creative and media as equally important.
I was going to say, you can't say equal.
Well, it's not neutral. I think that the creative is so important because that's where you're supposed to be able to use all of this amazing data that we now have access to inform and to better refine the messaging, and I think that that's critical, but I do think that it's going to end up having to be a balance of some sort.
Rob, you got a thought?
Yeah, I'm going to steal something I once heard someone say. It was someone from Pfizer on a panel, and they were describing it as a soundboard, and that it's getting all the dials right in order to have the perfect mix for a given campaign success. And I think that's right. I think we love to, in this industry, just make these extreme statements and say TV is now only audience-based. But I think it's now can be audience-based, which I think is great. And I think that now is going to help television restore itself as the single most powerful advertising vehicle that's out there. It always had the best content, the most premium environment, the best screen for creativity, and now you're adding the ability to do audience-based buying, and I mean, now you have the best of every single possible component of marketing in one place.
Well, that's an interesting point, and kind of leads to something I've thought a lot about. I mean, So in this world, as you said, you know, television seems to be, and the consensus is it's going to eventually become a pretty much 100% audience-based medium. It's not quite there today. OTT is kind of leading that. But in a world like that where, you know, and kind of picking up on what Bill said, I forget his exact quote, but this concept that maybe, and I actually wrote it down, you know, our advertisers becoming more agnostic to where their content or their ads appear. I mean, other than like the Bill O'Reilly show or brand safety issues, I mean, is that true? Like, does context matter anymore on TV, or is it really just, as long as I can get to who I want to, doesn't matter what they're watching, I got my impressions. Well, I mean, Ken, do you have a, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I go back to the idea that we need some balance. I just don't think that it's ever going to not be important to an advertiser where, you know, where their commercials are airing. It's just always been a fundamental tenet of a very well-established business, and I don't see that going away. I see there being a happy medium where it's a combination of some of that, and then also audience-based targeting, which, you know, instead of just speaking to women 18 to 49, you're going after your actual target, you know, who you really want to get that message to, and you're able to refine your creative down to actually address that. So I think that there's room for both, essentially, and I think that that's where the advertisers that are willing to sort of try things out and test can actually make a lot of progress to getting to a state of equilibrium in that sense.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I saw there was a study earlier in the week, and someone mentioned YouTube earlier. It was showing that of those who were exposed to ads in front of offensive content, 40% thought less of the brand. So yes, context really matters. I might be the right target, but if I'm thinking worse of your brand because it's next to a racist video, then, I mean, that's an extreme case, but I think that we'd probably find something similar across the board, that to your point, it's a combination. You have to get the right person in the right premium environment. And that's why content matters so much still, and why advertisers care about it.
And I can see that, and I can certainly see it even from a media planning standpoint. There's certain shows, if you want reach, I mean, you've got to buy them because, you know, there's fewer and fewer of those shows, but that's another avenue. But so if that is the case, I mean, I'm wondering, you know, how does data help advertisers and agencies figure that out? Like, where is the content, the context and the content that I want? Because right now, you know, television rating, you know, the Nielsen ratings don't tell you that. They sort of tell you how big the audience is and maybe, you know, who they are demographically. But I sort of have a question in the back of my mind. I don't want to really tweak Nielsen too much, but I mean, are TV program ratings even going to be relevant in an audience-based world? And if context information of some point is relevant, is that ratings data or is that some other kind of data? I mean, anybody have any thoughts on that?
Can I chime in?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. So I think if we take a little bit broader view here, advertisers have historically and will continue to want to build relationships with real people. And they want to sell their products to real people. And the advent of creative is being able to put people into that psychological mindset to have a positive association or some sort of emotional association with that brand. And so in that way, creative builds the relationship. And you see sort of derivatives of that now with influencer marketing, with the ability to produce your own content and these little, even like a Giphy, right? So that's like one side of your brain. And then on the other side of your brain, you have part of that relationship being the right people and who's going to buy your stuff, who's interested in your stuff, who's going to convert to buying your stuff, right? And I think that's where data comes in and is very sort of symbiotic, potentially, right? I know it's hard for my fine arts photography sister and myself to get in the same room and like talk about anything. But ideally, right, we have left and right sides of our brain. And so data creates that relationship. As far as the business of television, the business of branding, the business of performance marketing goes, we're finally sort of at that juncture where things can come together and we're all like in the thick of it, right? And like what that means. And so instead of asking, well, is it creative or is it data? I think one of the things we need to look at is how do we as practitioners and as leaders and sort of innovators in this marketing space start to build the connective tissue between both sides of that relationship that a marketer wants.
That's great.
Greg, you chime in on that too, on the data piece. You know, we really focus on just building out the audience targeting, both for creative and for just reaching the right audience for the advertiser. Early on, we were compared heavily against contextual placement. So whatever KPI contextual was making, they were comparing our audiences against that. So we'd have to really refine to that and then try to beat that KPI. And that was always a challenge in the beginning, but as we got better with it and with the advertiser to find out what were the components and what sort of attributes within this seed audience were the ones that were converting that we could replicate and build those out more. And that happened both on the advertiser side and on the content side. Because we had a lot of content providers coming to us saying, hey, we're going to be launching about 5 new programs. We know what the profile of this program viewer looks like from a personality standpoint, demographic standpoint, income standpoint. Help us create, you know, universes of people to target for this. So it's pretty interesting to work on both sides from a content perspective and also from a data perspective for the advertisers on then seeing where can we target these people, both, you know, and it depends on the advertiser. It could be an advertiser who's looking for very low funnel, like they want engagement to actually go through to the site and do something, or is it P&G or something who wants just larger branding dollars to be in front of the right eyes? And that's something that we've found very, it's trained us to have to ask a lot of questions up front so we can make sure that we're guiding them in the right direction based on what they're best.
Yeah, that's a great comment, and it's another thing that we think about a lot is, you know, and I know you as V12 work with not just with OTT but other digital medium.
Yeah.
You know, now that attribution is available, like real-time sort of conversion and sales lift on television, that like it's been on digital, you know, there is a bit of a move, or at least a certain interest among people to use TV more for lower funnel kind of direct response, the sales lift, than kind of the traditional upper funnel brand building sort of awareness building stuff. Are you guys seeing that? And I guess my other question is TV the right medium for that? Can TV be, I mean, I know there's a 2 a.m. commercials from the direct marketers, but other than that, I mean, is TV the right medium for that sort of messaging?
It's come up actually today. It came up in a meeting today. And from a data perspective, within OTT, this is something that I think we'll work closely with, and a lot of advertisers will, with companies like LiveRamp, in the sense that if you're one of the, you know, I have like an OTT with like how many streaming apps on there. My partner and my family, they're all using my login. So you have a primary user and then tertiary users. So the advertisers are coming in trying to target this primary user, but they've got logins from, you know, everywhere else. So then what we're trying to figure out is, okay, how can we take this campaign and do true attribution? So what we're trying to do is then come back and say, okay, let's take whatever the conversion was that they saw lift, bring it back in, and then work with somebody who has a strong identity graph, match it against the actual lat long or some sort of very location-based target on where that PII sits of that OTT, and then find out from that how much that conversion happened outside of that. So we can see, is there outliers? Is any of that connected? And if it is connected, can we match it back through some more identity graph and then be able to come back and say, oh, okay, we know these two, they share the same last name, but they're different locations. So actually it is the same primary user that got to the right person, right profile. But that's a difficult part because a lot of OTT people share their logins with their parents, and that's going to be a very different profile to target. So from a data perspective, as far as attribution, that's where we run into more challenges. But I think a lot of the identity graphing that's happening now will help solve that, as we could do a lot more deep diving into measurement.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, that's a whole issue with sort of the household, the viewer, and even the device in terms of as that much that relates to. Mobile tends to be individual, OTT tends to not be as much, but yeah.
I think, just to jump in on the question of, the larger question of what that word actually means, you know.
Which word, attribution?
Attribution.
Yes.
It means different things to different advertisers. It depends on what category you're talking about. It depends on what KPIs you're looking to measure. There are really simple ways to do that now, using set-top box viewing data, for example. I mean, you can tie that back to, you know, to store visitation. You can do it with, you know, you can merge all of these data sets together, and you just need, you know, a common set of pipes to be able to do that. But we can do a lot of that work now, and it's something that a lot of our clients, network groups, that it's become a fundamental question that, you know, it's like, yes, we know we want to be able to do attribution work for TV with lower funnel specifically. Can we do that? Yes, we absolutely can do that.
You know, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think we have to walk a careful line too. You mentioned, is it going to become a DR vehicle? I think that, I don't think just because we have all this amazing attribution, I think if anything, it'll help inform creative and inform the life cycle and the time it takes for someone to go purchase. But to your point, the emotional connection that TV creates and the value of creating the brand relationship over time, that's almost unquantifiable in a way. So we kind of have to walk a line not to overreact.
I agree with you, and I don't enjoy it. I think, you know, we were just having this conversation right before with somebody from the audience as far as, you know, just before the panel, and he made me think of some interesting things. And, you know, I can almost ask the same question I asked a minute ago the other way. Is there a risk that the one vehicle that's really been used for brand building and sort of high concept stuff now becomes sort of just over focused on metrics and becomes pure attribution? Hey, I don't know why that creative worked better, but it seemed to work better. And, you know, I know the measurements aren't perfect with the numbers, and my CEO likes numbers, so I'm going to go with that. And so you've sort of, it reminds me of what happened with marketing mix and CPG, if anybody worked in the packaged goods industry 15 years ago, where that sort of took over, and strategy and innovation took a back seat to tactical optimization. So my price be $279 or $289. I mean, really, who cared that much, right? But the model said it mattered, but maybe it did, but not as much as the right overall portfolio of products or whatever. Is TV and TV advertising in danger of falling into that same hole where everybody's so focused on micromanaging all the different granular aspects that you can now manage, and nobody's watching the big picture of is this even the right feeling and message and aura for our brand?
I personally, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that would go against the fundamental nature of what TV has always been to consumers. And I don't think there's any danger there. I just think that now that we have all of this interesting data and we're able to use it in ways that we weren't before, it's just going to help us move forward and do what we were talking about earlier, which is have more of a balance. But I don't think that that's really a risk.
Yeah, I don't see us getting way too down in the weeds, because it'll kill any form of scale that we could ever reach audiences with. And I think at the same time too, though, like you said, we do have to use this to feed creative. But what helps with that is we have a whole data set of personality-focused data that we layer on top. And so once we start finding out what converted audiences look like, if there is a conversion metric, then we can start using that, looking at personality types, and then trying to display the right creative that speaks to them. So then we kind of bridge the gap between the analytics and the creative side, and start being able to inform them of saying,
is that happening? And that's a great point. And maybe for Rob,
it's
is that happening?
It's starting to happen. Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's definitely not commonplace at this point, but it is starting to happen. It's happening both on. And this came up in the previous talk, and it did happen in our case where there is a lot of product placement within programming, and so they take that into account when they're creating custom segments. They want to target a new original programming that may be on, I don't know, Hulu or whoever, Showtime, one of these guys. When they do a product placement within that, they'll keep that in mind and make sure that that's the brand alignment with the show, usually is in brand alignment with the product, and then we'll create segments and models around that to make sure that everything is cohesive, so that not only the commercial that is shown, but also the content provided is to the right audience. And we're advertising to the right audience.
And that's something that's being done more, obviously, as people can skip ads. I mean, it was always a
Yeah,
great thing, I think.
for sure,
But
yeah.
now that, I think it feels to me a little bit, and I think what you said is totally on, but is there more? Like, does digital let creative do more things and have more degrees of freedom to allow customization or even deeper connection through the entire purchase funnel, right? I mean, I know, Rob, your company deals with this. I mean, is that happening, and can it happen?
Yes, it can happen, and across all of these new advanced devices that people are watching TV on. And I also think the onus is on us to, we have to do this, because when you think about our TV experiences, from Hulu to Netflix, there's an expectation set that we're getting personal. I mean, you land on that screen and it's recommending TV shows and recommending content. It's all personalized for me. So then when I get into an ad break and it's not personalized, that's going to become more and more jarring for everybody. So we have to make sure that advertising keeps pace, whether that's targeting off of better data and hitting the right audience segment so that the wrong person isn't seeing your ad, but then when they do, taking the data that you guys are talking about and personalizing the creative to give the right offer to the right person based on their household personality type or other attributes that we have on them, that becomes critical, because if we don't do it, it's going to be so jarring to not have
Well, and it is, and I
personalized
get ads, we all do, right? We get the ad that you know, maybe you bought the product and you're still getting the ad. Why are you targeting me? Well, you won, you know, it's over, but they don't know that.
You won.
I mean, I don't see that, as a consumer, I don't see that changing very much, but is it going to change?
It is, because it's now possible. I think we're now in a phase of just education and bringing the rest of the agency ecosystem up to par, up to speed on what's possible. Because it's not even just personalizing ads; it's sequencing them and changing what you're seeing. Because all of these devices have IDs, and we have the ability to tell a story from each and every exposure to a commercial in the space now. And I think once people know and are also able to develop the creative for that, I think we'll see a lot more of that in the coming year.
And I think in the coming couple of years too, we're moving towards, and this is something that we're a part of, LiveRamp's part of, but you know, if you look at a millennial, they have an OTT in front of behind their TV, and they're sitting there oftentimes watching a program with their laptop and a tablet or a phone next to them. So there's a whole story being told between all these three. So if you can tell a cohesive story between all three, but not creep them out. So there is a point where you have to make sure that the profiling and the ads you provide them are really interesting, meaningful to them, but don't encroach in them as far as like, how'd they know that? Or that's odd. You know, so that's the line that we walk, whether it be through creative or through targeting or in some ways, that we have to make sure that we're being very conscious about, you know, how we target.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yep, the creep
yeah,
factor.
the creep, and you know, there was something I saw a study the other day. I mean, they come out every day, I guess, that talked about just that you know, forget about all these issues around you know, your ISP, releasing your information, or Facebook doing that, or whoever. You know, there's also just questions about, you know, just the creepiness factor. Like, okay, it's not PII, but how did you know I was looking at Mazdas or something?
Yeah.
You know, how do advertisers sort of deal with it? Is that just a fact of life in this world? That, you know, how do you balance the sort of targeting with the creepiness and the fact that, you know, in this study it said, you know, particularly millennials who are pretty smart about this, you know, over half of them said, I don't like to be creeped out by over-targeted ads, even though they might be what I want. How did you know that?
Exactly.
How do you manage that?
I actually have an unconventional
Uh-oh.
response.
Here we go. It's coming out now.
Unconventional. It's different than controversial. One trend that I think you guys have been probably noticing too is this push from, instead of making advertisements, making content for like a variety of platforms.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
So given the fact that the majority of televisions in this country are now connected through the internet, what if we took that content first approach, and instead of saying, okay, I know I always buy Tide, you already got me, it became, that's really funny, or that's really cute, or that's like relevant to my life, and it becomes part of my sort of content consumption or media consumption patterns.
I completely agree with you there.
Exactly.
That's how we actually
So
started
like,
this
we
business.
can get away with ads, right?
Yeah.
We can like totally do away with ads without ad blocking.
Well, in the
If we
OTT,
have a bit
yeah,
more
it's
creativity,
true. In the
right?
OTT
And a bit
space.
more data
Yeah,
to sort of
totally
build
agree.
out these platforms.
Yeah, in the OTT
Yeah.
space especially, there's less commercials. Like, you know, the only time I ever really see a lot of commercials, like on the Shondaland show or something, like how to Get Away with Murder, like that's where they show commercials, like in the other places too. But what we found is a lot of the OTT streaming providers came to us first and said, we're going to be spending millions of dollars on these new programs. Please help us find audiences that are going to be consuming this. And then they also came to us on the flip side and said, we have a really good idea of who's going to like this program. We also know that we want the opposite. We want the mirror image of the 180-degree opposite person, so we can suppress them from ever seeing this promotion.
Right.
And that gives them more tools to make sure they really optimize their spend. So that's where I see a lot of it being content first. Yeah.
You know, I'm kind of getting the high sign here, I think, because we're running a little bit late, and I apologize for that. I think we'd have to kind of wrap it up. But, you know, I guess my last question or my last thought is, you know, is data ultimately kind of a connective tissue that can kind of bring together the creative, the content or context, and the targeting in a way that will make advertising both more effective and impactful, but also maybe more, you know, more relevant and enjoyable to consumers? Is that the promise of data, maybe? I hope. I'd like it to be.
Event, I think we have to say
I think
absolutely.
so.
Don't we?
Okay, good job.
Yeah, we can evangelize around that one.
I think,
Yes.
I think we are. I think the challenge for us at all this point is I focus so much on audience targeting to get into the right ad or the right content in front of the right user. The creative goes somewhere else, and I don't get to see that piece of it. And so that's where I want to have more of a connection with that group, because like you said, that's so personal, and that's so tied to the brand or the program that the quantitative and the analytical and the creative do need to talk, because that's very important.
I think that's right, and I think, being a holistic kind of person myself, I think you can't
Yeah.
parse things up too much, and they need, at some point, earlier usually better than later, that it needs to all come together and they need to talk to each other. Creatives don't like data, and quantitative deals don't like creatives, and there's a lot of that
We
stuff
need
too.
to
But
learn to be nice to each other. Yeah.
you gotta learn to be nice to each other. That's a nice thought to end this on in these times. So thank you very much. These guys will be available later.
Thank you so much.